Internet, we are back with part 2 in the Road to Victory series for every Big Brother winner from Season 2 to Season 25. Now, if you haven't seen part 1 and the first 3 winners from last week, check it out. Otherwise, let's move into the final season in the old house layout with identical twins, long-lost siblings, and our next champion. Let's talk about Drew Daniel, the winner of Big Brother 5. Similar to the previous winners, Drew plays a very social game mixed with the most competition wins of any winner yet. He mimics the style of June from the previous year, where he aims to be in the middle of the house at most times while also doing the opposite of June, trying to be as inoffensive and unremarkable as possible. And that's not a slight, it actually pays off for him. Drew entered the game wanting to be on everyone's good side and basically did his best to never piss anyone off. Drew instantly bonded and broed down with 3 other guys: Cowboy, Jace, and Scott. One of Drew's allies, Jace, won the first HOH, and their alliance, the Four Horsemen, basically served as the villains to the rest of the house, kind of like Chilltown and Boogie actually, and were able to evict a seemingly strong player in Mike, nicknamed the Dawn, in the first week, as he was perceived as one of the bigger strategists out of the gate. Drew subtly tells Jace, the HOH, about how the Dawn wanted Jace out in the following week. This happened because Drew was already on good terms with both the Dawn and Diane. Another very important cog in Drew's winning wheel that we'll talk about in a minute. Another important footnote about Drew's game is how the veto players were determined each week. Instead of being a random draw, the HOH and the 2 nominees would each get to pick 1 player to join them in the competition. Nokomis picked Drew to help her in week 1, and of the 8 times players could get picked to play in the veto all season, up to the final 6, Drew was selected by either the HOH or one of the nominees each and every week. It is a testament to his social game that he was always considered an option to someone in the house, especially as early as week 1. Drew also finds himself in a showmance with Diane early in the game, a showmance that would take the both of them all the way to the final 3. Diane was positioned on the other side of the house, and this connection allowed him to get eyes and ears on a lot of the other players. The pre-jury portion of Big Brother 5 largely circles around the Four Horsemen alliance and their inevitable demise. In week 3, Drew inadvertently wins the HOH, not exactly what he wanted to do, given he was all about being good with everyone, and now he has to show his cards. Except, he really struggles to do so. Drew visibly struggles so much to decide who to nominate that the rest of the cast begin to feel bad for him, giving him their sympathy. And this isn't really intentional by Drew, he is actually conflicted. And as a fence sitter, he does what people in the middle do best. He nominates 2 players on opposite sides of the house. Holly and Nokomis both go up, and Drew is telling both sides what they want to hear. His own alliance, the Horsemen, chew him out for this move, saying that it was a strategic blunder, but the reality is Drew saw the writing on the wall with the Horsemen and didn't think that he could go the distance with them, so he decided to try and keep them at bay by playing the middle and keeping up the appearance of a wounded deer. Holly was evicted in week 3, and Drew's showmance Diane won HOH in week 4, leading to her easily targeting and eventually evicting Scott, one of the Horsemen. In week 5, Nokomis wins HOH and targets Jace, with an ingenious plan established by Marvin to backdoor him. Basically, Nokomis nominates 2 pawns, 2 players who she didn't want to get evicted, and the 3 of them each pick players to compete in the veto. All 6 of these players are on the same page. Whoever wins the veto uses it on one of the nominees, and Jace goes up and gets evicted. There is nothing he can do to stop it. And despite being a former ally of Jace's and one of the Four Horsemen, Drew gets picked to play, and everyone throws it to him. A bold move given he was supposed to be allied with Jace and was telling Jace what he wanted to hear, and after Drew wins the veto, he eventually tells both Cowboy and Jace that he plans to not use it. He plans to go against Nokomis' backdoor plan. Except Drew was lying to the Horsemen, he did use it, and Jace went up and was subsequently evicted. Now that kind of wraps up the demise of the Horseman Alliance and Drew's beginning half of his game, but I did skip over a major twist in this season that happened after the Scott eviction. It turned out that one player, Adria, had a secret identical twin in the game who was swapping in and out every few days. Once they reached the final 10, her twin, Natalie, could enter the game as her own player. They succeeded, they made the final 10, and now there were 2 Adrias in the house instead of 1. With Jace as the house target, as I just talked about, this twin twist proved really beneficial for Drew, as he was able to bond with Adria and Natalie over having an identical twin as well. Yeah, talk about a plot twist within a plot twist. Drew's twin wasn't in the game, but it was just a really odd coincidence. Even weirder was that Drew's showmance, Diane, also had an identical twin, also not in the game, and so the 4 of them came together to form a twins alliance. Drew, Diane, and the twins. I gotta think the producers were trying to cook with this.
I was so pumped when Drew stood up to Jace and, gave him a little piece of his mind.
You looked at me like I stuck a dagger in your heart, man.
Once Drew finds out that Adria and Natalie have been playing, the whole game together and switching, I think he's gonna understand it, and maybe even try to build a really good alliance with them.
Right now, I feel like I'm a spider in the middle of its web. That web is attached to each person in this house, and it's pulling me in all these different directions.
Adria won the next HOH, which would kickstart the jury, and she targeted Will and Marvin for eviction. This week ruffled a lot of feathers and soured the reputation of the twins, Adria and Natalie, to the rest of the house. Drew was safe while the twins were in power, but he quickly realized that he couldn't work the twins alliance beyond a week-to-week basis. Drew began to stop trying to work with big groups and instead focus solely on key relationships, largely with his showmance Diane and Cowboy, the other remaining horseman. With the demise of the 4 Horsemen alliance, Cowboy was a lost puppy in the game with no allies, and so he flocked to Drew, and the 2 of them solidified a final 2. Will was evicted as the first juror, and then Nokomis and Marvin proceeded to take out both of the twins in back-to-back HOHs. Drew was with the house on removing the twins from the game after they heel-turned and became villains, and it bought him time to regroup and lay low. At the final 6, Drew began to fire on all cylinders as he entered the endgame. He won the HOH, the first ever fast-forward week in Big Brother history, with a shortened HOH reign. He targeted Marvin, as Marvin was the biggest threat left and a wild card. And hey, just like that, in a very quick HOH reign, Drew landed his shots and Marvin was sent packing. It should be mentioned also that Drew nominated Diane this week as a pawn next to Marvin. He was annoyed with Diane as this weird moment occurred around this time where Marvin tried to create drama with Drew and Diane by pretending to kiss her in front of Cowboy. Cowboy then did what Marvin thought he would do. He went and told Drew about it, spreading the news, and it just caused tension and tears. Diane was close to Marvin, but not that close, but he wanted Marvin out, and Diane was a vote for him to stay, so he put her on the block. Diane was blindsided at the nomination. Drew didn't really care as he wanted her to be blindsided in the first place. It sold it better as if she was out of the loop, which, well, she was. And hey, Marvin ended up leaving anyway. The final 5 was the most dubious round for Drew's game, as Nokomis won the HOH and nominated both Drew and Cowboy. This meant that if anyone but Diane won the veto, either Drew or one of his allies, Cowboy or Diane, were getting evicted. Drew and Cowboy managed to throw the veto comp to Diane to ensure that she was able to be safe and use the veto on Drew, forcing Nokomis to nominate Karen, her last ally remaining in the game, allowing Drew and Diane to evict Karen. This was a pretty brilliant strategy, and it just so happened that the veto comp that they played in allowed them to do this, and hey, this is ideally what happens when you go into a final 5. You throw it to the person who's not on the block. Drew won the Final 4 HOH, and Cowboy won his first ever comp, the Final 4 veto, meaning Nokomis was now toast. Oh, and by the way, I didn't even mention this at the beginning of the season, but Nokomis was Cowboy's sister. But, okay, this is gonna get weird. Going into the season, they didn't know each other, and they happened to find this out, that they were related, as they compared personal stories. Yeah, it's pretty wild. This season went hard on family therapy twists. Cowboy was loyal to Drew and Diane, and so he evicted his sister at the Final Four, insisting on taking Drew to the Final Two. Meanwhile, Diane, the other player in the Final Three, was also planning to take Drew to the Final Two. Drew intended to throw the Final Three HOH to avoid having to cut either of them, and instead earn their jury vote by having them cut each other, but he once again happened to win the HOH after both Cowboy and Diane threw it to him. The night before the final eviction, Diane got a little tipsy and spilled to Drew about her odds to beat him in the final two, and while Drew had repeatedly said he planned to take Cowboy to the end, this only confirmed to him that it had to happen. He did have feelings for Diane, but he was here for the game first. Their relationship could take center stage after the season. Drew won the final HOH and cut Diane in a devastating blindside to her, but even then she was still rooting for him to win over Cowboy. Drew defeated Cowboy by a final jury vote of 4-3, a razor-thin margin where Cowboy got the twins' votes as well as Nokomis, his sisters, so it kind of makes sense. Drew played a very subtle social game and won the right competitions when he needed to. He adapted to the players in the house as the dynamics changed each week, and he ultimately rode that mighty middle to victory up until the very end.
And the winner of Big Brother 5 is Drew. Congratulations. You are the official winner of Big Brother 5, Drew.
Big Brother 6 was won by Maggie Ausburn, where she created, helmed, and led an alliance for most of the season up until that same alliance crowned her the winner in the end. Maggie's overall road to victory is one of the more unique journeys compared to the previous 4 winning games before her, where those 4 winners had fluid houses with shifting dynamics. Maggie's season was primarily dominated by a split house. 2 sides, 2 alliances, where mostly everyone knew where they stood, and it was just a matter of who won the power each week to take the shot at the other side. And I guess there were technically a few people in the middle trying to float, but were there really? On paper, this should have meant that the alliance with better competition beasts would just win out. They win the HOHs and get rid of the other side. But when you consider Maggie was against the best competitor in Big Brother history with Janelle, as well as other strong comp players like James and Rachel, you then might realize it wasn't really just comp wins that the better players this season leaned on. Even with a split house and nowhere to hide, the upper hand was won through social finesse and tactical brilliance. But we'll get to that in a minute. Maggie entered the game with a secret relationship, her friend Eric, also known as Cappy, and the two of them immediately decided to divide and conquer. Eric formed a men's alliance. As there was a gender imbalance, he rallied the men while Maggie focused on the women. This would mean they could have protection from both sides in the event that their names were ever floated as a potential target. The problem for them is that, as it turned out, the big twist of this season was that everyone in the game also had a secret partner, and so Maggie and Eric's strategy didn't offer much protection when everyone was already looking out for their implicit number one. That said, Maggie still formed bonds with several players in the early weeks outside of Eric, particularly with Yvette, April, Bo, and Jennifer. She was even picked to play in the first veto competition by Rachel. And then there was James, a player who was closer to Eric at the time, but he was also a keen strategist who decided to openly play the middle. In week 2, Eric won HOH, meaning Maggie was secured until week 3. Eric, however, wasn't liking Michael, a guy that he was supposed to be allied with, and so Eric took a shot at Michael by nominating him. Michael was kind of a creep, and several of the women didn't like him, and Eric, who was mostly allied with the women at this point, decided to do something about it. A huge blowup occurred, but ultimately Michael was sent packing after a lot of heavy words were exchanged. In week 3, Kaser won HOH, and Maggie was supposed to be good with him. The plan was to send Janelle out right after Michael. The two of them were pariahs, they were a showmance, but the problem was that Kaser was increasingly finding himself on the outs too. Michael was his pre-existing friend, and with Michael going out in week 2, Kaser felt a personal vendetta to now target Eric, Maggie's number one ally. Kaser initially targeted James for being a strong player who was playing the middle. James had a budding reputation for playing both sides, and after Eric and Kaser made a deal not to target each other, James became the next best option. James was nominated alongside Maggie, although Maggie was a pawn and not the target. Maggie was considered a big threat by Janelle and Kaser, but Kaser had other schemes in mind to start taking shots. The power of veto competition unfolded, and in a weird twist of fate, Kaser, Janelle, and Howie all threw the competition to James. They systematically eliminated both Maggie and Yvette from the comp and allowed James, the target, to win the veto, meaning he was now safe. Maggie immediately realized what was happening. Right before the competition, a new strategy had been formed by Kaser to get James off the block and replace him with Eric. This would go against the deal that Kaser had made with Eric, but at the same time, Eric was perceived as the biggest threat in the house. He had just ended his HOA train where he held a lot of power, and now he was exposed. Maggie knew she and Eric were screwed, and when she confronted Kaser about it, Kaser didn't hide from the truth.
You're not the target. You were the bait.
So you sealed my fate.
No. I sealed your partner's fate.
Eric was nominated next to Maggie in week 3, and all of a sudden, Maggie's game was crumbling down around her. While she was a strong social player with a lot of allies, her number one ally was now going home, and she had a personal connection to this betrayal. It wasn't just someone she had met a few weeks ago, it was her longtime friend. Maggie felt awful for Eric, how this eviction was set in stone because of the numbers. Kaser had the numbers to get Eric out, and Maggie even tried to fall on the sword for Eric by asking the other players to vote her out over him. Eric didn't want this, however, and believed that she was the stronger player between the two of them, and so ultimately Eric was evicted, despite Maggie's closest allies all voting to evict her. Maggie was one vote away from being evicted, and this being the end of her journey, and yet she survived. She was always going to survive given the circumstances, and she instead used this eviction to fuel the rest of her game. A game that would lead to her becoming the winner. Maggie retaliated by forming an opposing alliance with all of her closest allies who weren't working with Kaser. She pulled in Yvette, April, Bo, and Jennifer, and the 5 of them became known as the Friendship. Now they were at the final 11. They were outnumbered, but not for long. Maggie clutched it up and won the week 4 HOH and cut a deal with both Howie and Rachel, 2 players in the opposing alliance, to protect each other going forward. Maggie planned to avenge Eric, just as Kaser had avenged Michael. She also heavily interrogated James, the man in the middle, as to his true allegiance, but well, she could read right through him and knew that he wasn't trustworthy. James was so spooked by Maggie believing she was a cop of some sort, but she wasn't. She was a nurse. Maggie nominated James and Kaser, with Kaser as the target, and once James's girlfriend won the veto and used it on him, Janelle went up as a pawn. Kaser, the head of the Sovereign Six Alliance as they were known, was evicted. Both sides had now lost major pieces, except in Maggie's case, she was the true leader, not Eric. Eric was treated more as a martyr for the Friendship. Their desire to exact revenge on his behalf was the fuel they needed, and Maggie was more than willing to keep them together to protect herself at all costs. Howie won the next HOH and wanted to target Maggie as a new twist was revealed where a previously evicted player would come back into the game. This kind of threw a spanner in the works for everyone. It was basically either going to be Eric or Kaser, and they knew it, and America was voting, and well, little did the players in the game know, they adored Kaser. Rachel argued that Maggie should be evicted as Eric could return, and when it all but seemed guaranteed Maggie was going to be going up as the target, at the last second, she pulled Howie aside in the HOH room and cut him another deal for protection. Maggie argued that James is the biggest threat to everyone as he's playing both sides. He can't be trusted, and he will target Howie and Rachel going forward. And he is way more of a physical threat, so you know he's going to be winning these competitions. She used James's middleman position against him, and with an offer of protection too, Howie decided to accept the deal and target James. Janelle was even on board with this plan as well. Howie nominated James and Sarah, James's girlfriend, and even though James did go on to win the veto and take himself off the block, dooming his girlfriend in the process, it needs to be said that this single move where Maggie gets Howie to nominate James and Sarah over herself and April is one of the most tactically brilliant moves ever pulled off in Big Brother history. By securing all Friendship members' safety for the week, Maggie was guaranteeing the friendship would take up 5 of the final 9 spots in the game. Well, of course, there's also this twist with potentially somebody coming back, so that does kind of change it, but this is definitely helping that. This meant that if only one member in the alliance reached the final 2, they would have 4 votes locked in the jury to vote for them. Maggie didn't actually have to worry that much about jury management. This was her management. She had a solid alliance that was rallying around her and would crown her the winner if she just got to the final 2. That said, April and Jennifer were having a tiff with Yvette, and this was one of the rougher weeks for the friendship as cracks did form, they always do, but it was Maggie who held them together and convinced them to strategically stick together. Without Maggie, I can't say that Sarah's eviction is guaranteed, although it should have been, but hey, kudos to Maggie for hurting these cats. And of course, the asterisk on top of this entire play is that we are about to re-enter the week with Kaser coming back into the game, but, well, as we're about to see, that's a whole different story.
Everything in this game is about deals and securing yourself more than just 1 week.
Do I need to be worried
About what?
about me? But I can't trust anything in this game. I don't have a partner.
The goal of this week is to ensure that no one from the friendship gets nominated. That way, if someone does come back and it is Eric, we will have a strong friendship.
Maggie said, if I put up James and Sarah this week, no matter who comes to the doors next week, whether if it's Eric, I'm safe from Eric for another week.
They're going up. They're going up.
Your word.
They give my word they're going up.
Okay.
They're going out of here.
You give me your word that they are going
They're
up.
going, and Sarah's and James's keys will be the 2 that are not in the box.
Okay.
Sarah was evicted, and of course, the one wrinkle in the plan was that Kaser returned to the game. Kaser, the leader of the Sovereign Six, was now back to get revenge on Maggie for evicting him a couple weeks prior. However, after the longest competition in Big Brother history unfolded, the pressure cooker, lasting 14 hours, at the very end, Kaser chose to cut a deal with Jennifer, a member of the friendship, to still go after James, the man in the middle, and at least nominate one player from her side next to him. Jennifer accepted the deal and became the new HOH, and, well, Maggie tells Jen that she has to target Kaser. It's that simple. He is the leader of the other group. He would put any of them up if he had the power. You gotta do what you gotta do. So Jen puts up 2 pawns, Janelle and Rachel, thus frustrating Kaser, and after Rachel wins the veto, it isn't James who goes up, but Kaser. Kaser is re-evicted like a revolving door, and the Sovereign Six are not happy with Jen's decision. Karma kicks in, and despite Maggie pushing the Kaser eviction, Janelle wins HOH and targets Jennifer. Maggie is nominated next to her, but Janelle wants revenge, a lot of revenge this season, and Jennifer gets it served cold. She is evicted, and the game is tied up 4-4 on both sides. The season basically unfolds from here in like a ping-pong-like fashion, with 2 alliances trading HOHs the rest of the way. Bo wins the HOH at Final 8 and evicts Rachel, then April wins and evicts James, then Howie wins and goes after the last pair in the house, that being Yvette and Bo. Maggie wins the veto this week at the Final 6, and if she uses it, April is gonna go up instead. Maggie admits it's probably better for her to cut April and keep Bo and Yvette, as they would act as a shield for her going into the endgame. They were the last remaining pre-existing duo in the house. But, on the other hand, she likes April and believes that April will work in Maggie's best interests in the endgame. Maggie goes with her heart and doesn't use the veto. She spares April, and Bo is evicted. Maggie then throws the Final 5 HOH to Yvette to allow herself a chance to win the Final 4 HOH instead. Yvette was closer to Maggie than April, and when Janelle wins the veto and takes herself off the block, it is April who goes up in her place, not Maggie. Howie is evicted, and Maggie is now in the Final 4 with both Yvette and April, 2 players who want to take her to the Final 2, where they will both lose. The only thing stopping Maggie from winning now is Janelle, who wins the Final 4 HOH. Both Yvette and April lose their cool on each other, and when Yvette wins the final veto of the summer, she easily cuts April to take Maggie to the Final 3. Maggie excels by listening, not talking, and just laying low. She had planted seeds all summer, kept her alliance in check, and strategically outfoxed everyone in the game. Maggie had an iron grip on her alliance, so much so that a pact was made from the beginning that if any of them betrayed another and didn't take one of the friendship members to the Final 2 if they had the power, the betrayer would lose their jury votes. And because Maggie was in the final 3 with Yvette, and Yvette had just won the final HOH by a hair, like the closest it ever could have been, she knew she had to take Maggie to the final 2 to stand a chance at winning the game. Because if she caught Maggie, the leader of the alliance, she was destined to lose. But then we're not talking about Yvette's road to victory, are we? Yvette wins this final HOH by the closest hair in the history of the show. Yvette cuts Janelle, takes Maggie, and it's gotta be said that up until season 24, Maggie was the only winner in Big Brother history to never win part 1 or part 2 of the final HOH, and yet still go on to win the game. From desiring to fall on her sword back in week 3, to commanding the season with the greatest moves and Jedi mind tricks of any winner yet, Maggie won the final jury vote 4-3 over Yvette, becoming the winner of Big Brother 6.
Congratulations, Maggie. You are the winner of Big Brother 6. Come on out, Maggie and Yvette. You both have a few people who would love to see you.
Season 7 was the first all-star season of Big Brother, where 14 previous players returned to the house to play the game all over again. Some of the players were fan favorites, others were handpicked by the producers, and then we have house guests such as Mike Malin, also known as Boogie, originally from season 2, who was cast largely because Dr. Will Kirby, his best friend from Big Brother 2 and the winner of the season, would only play on this season so long as Boogie got to play too. And I think that this road to victory is going to be one of the more unique ones in the entire series. It's important to start right here because almost the entire season of All Stars is dominated by this duo, Dr. Will and Boogie, and it's their Chilltown reunion bad cop, good cop dynamic that encapsulates much of the narrative from the premiere to the finale. Boogie's road to victory is almost entirely intertwined with Will's game and vice versa. They basically serve as one player with two heads, and it all started as early as the preseason when the cast was being selected. Dr. Will entered this house with a massive target, the only previous winner, and Boogie was seen as his Robin to Will's Batman. They reunited and raised the Chilltown banner. Their season 2 alliance was back and ready to take the game by storm. Chilltown swore to take each other to the final 2, and then some. They were riding with each other until the wheels fell off, and they planned to do it with as many schemes as possible. And given the nature of the season with returning players, and all of these players knowing each other before the season began, past relationships absolutely came into play. Chilltown had a deal with a few strong players such as James from season 6 and Danielle from season 3 called the Legion of Doom. Likewise, Boogie knew Erica from season 4. They had dated before the season even began, which is a funny footnote to consider given the outcome of both of their journeys. Janelle likewise had a crush on Will, and then I guess so did Howie as far as their one-sided bromance goes. Chilltown were known threats and targets because of their obvious ride or die relationship. They didn't hide it, but in turn, they used that to their advantage, to encourage other players to keep them around as shields and targets. Likewise, Chilltown repeatedly promised to keep packs of players safe going into the following weeks, seemingly without realizing Will Kirby does not care to win comps ever, thus his true power was always with his silver tongue. Nonetheless, the Season 6 alliance of Kaser, Howie, James, and Janelle, the Sovereign 6 or the Sovereign 4, was a massive target and they kept winning HOHs. Janelle and also Jace from Season 5, they were the first co-HOHs and they evicted Allison. Meanwhile, Kaser won the second week and targeted Nokomis. Chilltown made a pact with Kaser and Season 6 that week to protect each other going forward. Together, they made up half the house going into week 3 and would instead target the rest of the house, the players who had no allegiance to anyone and were thus dubbed floaters. Dr. Will loved to play risky and repeatedly asked to get nominated. He wanted to lower everyone's guards so they wouldn't take him so seriously about how much his heart was in the game. Boogie didn't do this, but he went along with it to support Will, knowing the guy was just sort of playing to the cameras, and ultimately this was just serving in Boogie's best interest. James won HOH in week 3 and nominated Will alongside Chicken George, wanting the Chicken Man out of all people, and the first reveal of the Legion Legion of Doom alliance with James and Danielle is formed. Boogie also begins to outwardly romance Erica, as well as campaign for Will to stay, and once Jace is revealed to be one of the biggest floaters of the season, he gets replaced after Chicken George wins the veto and turns into a giant blueberry, and the entire house votes Jace out while sitting next to Dr. Will. Janelle wins the HOH in week 4, and it is a total season 6 steamroll up to this point. 4 straight HOHs. Dr. Will begins to romance Janelle and pitches a deal for Chilltown to work with Season 6 even deeper into the game with the plan to target and eradicate all of the remaining floaters. To keep up appearances of going after Chilltown, Janelle nominates Boogie alongside Erica, his showmance, but this didn't mean that much when Boogie goes on to win the veto and then takes himself off the block. Diane, a floater, is renominated and evicted. That said, a major rift forms here in week 4 between the Season 6 alliance, largely thanks to Chilltown. Yes, Chilltown was working with Season 6, but they were also kind of working with everyone, and they needed the Season 6 steamroll to slowly start to crack. And guess what? They finally cracked that steamroll and split them up. Despite being in a preseason alliance that were also working together, James knew that Will was a massive threat and a strong player, and pitched hard to Janelle for her to take out Will instead of Boogie. But Will had put in work with Janelle, and Janelle was not having it. James was pissed off at her after he took out Jace in the previous week instead of taking a shot at Chilltown. He did that for the Season 6 alliance. That's what they wanted. That's what Janelle wanted. But now Janelle won't make the better move for that same alliance this week. Chilltown needed to get split up, and instead Season 6 unintentionally split up. From James's perspective, when he saw how selfish Janelle was being, this actually drove him closer to Chilltown and wanting to now work with Will and Boogie going forward. Danielle wins the HOH in week 5, the first non-Season 6 player to do so, and targets Janelle for eviction with James as a pawn. Chilltown were in a very comfortable spot, and so during the veto competition, despite having both Janelle and James's loyalty and pledges to win the comp for each of them, they instead both threw it to win gifts. This is going to be a recurring trend for the both of them. Janelle wins the veto, Danielle is annoyed, and thus Kaser is again evicted pre-jury for the 3rd time in 2 seasons. Janelle turns around and wins the next HOH and targets Danielle and Erica, working alongside Chilltown to take out these pesky floaters. Chilltown decide they want Marcellus out next and begin to drive a wedge between him and Janelle, attempting to break up that friendship. They also throw the veto yet again, this time to save Danielle from eviction, the exact opposite of the previous week, as she wins the POV and takes herself off the block. Janelle is annoyed. And then begins Operation Double Date. With Will showmancing Janelle and Boogie showmancing Erica, the two decide to take their romantic partners and use them together in tandem to target each other.
Chilltown is on a little mission right now called Operation Double Date. And the way it works is I get very close to Erica, Will gets very close to Janelle using our charisma, good looks, and winsome personalities. And what these girls think is that they're winning our hearts and they're manipulating us, but what we're really doing is
ripping their hearts out of their chest and squeezing the blood in the pocket of their cheap blouses before they can blink twice.
Will convinces Janelle to have her nominate Marcellus as a pawn to take out Erica, and it works. Marcellus goes up, and then Chilltown blindside Janelle by voting out Marcellus with the rest of the house. Up to this point, with Marcellus on his way out the door, Chilltown now had fake alliances with everyone in the house. The Legion of Doom with Danielle and James, Operation Double Date working over Janelle and Erica, and then the Target the Floaters alliance that included Howie. And then there was Chicken George, who was kind of just there, but hey, he liked Chilltown and he wasn't a threat, so whatever. Oh, right. And then Chicken George won the next HOH, and so Chilltown appealed to him to target Janelle. George nominates Erica and James. James then wins the veto, and now George is in a bind. You see, George kind of wanted James out. He didn't want to target Janelle, but Boogie hardcore wants George to put Janelle up so they can vote her out. But then, separately, Will approaches George and has a different plan. Will asks George to nominate him instead, and they vote out Erica. George takes this opportunity to do what the doctor ordered. He tells Erica that Will is going to go up and get evicted, which then prompts Erica to go tell Boogie what George is thinking of doing. Erica knows Boogie is tight with Will, and this will hurt Boogie's game. I mean, it will also hurt Erica's if she gets evicted over him, but she doesn't want either of them to go, even though Dr. Will is also targeting Erica. And so as all of this is happening, all of this swirling and confusion and miscommunication right before the veto ceremony, Boogie approaches George and essentially strong-arms him into not nominating Dr. Will. Chilltown has a major miscommunication this week, and it is their second sloppiest week all season. It's also probably important to note exactly how Boogie strong-arms George here to do what he wants. From the previous week, Boogie won a secret power in the game called the coup d'etat, which would allow him to overthrow either of the next 3 HOH nominations if he so desired. Yeah, it's pretty overpowered. Boogie wanted to hold on to this power through George's reign, but also subtly threatened George to do what Boogie said, or there would be consequences. Basically, Boogie was about to be HOH for 2 straight weeks, given George folds to Boogie's threats and doesn't nominate Will, but instead nominates Howie. The coup d'etat power is a minor part of Boogie's overall story, given it doesn't actually come into effect, and he also has it stripped from him, you might not know this, by the producers after he tells Will about it, which he wasn't allowed to do. Part of the rules of having this power was that it had to remain secret from everyone. But then he told Dr. Will, trying to be sly, he wasn't sly, there's cameras and microphones everywhere, and this fact kinda never made the episodes, and it never really mattered anyway. And hey, it's not like George knew any of this. The threat of the coup was enough to get him to fold. George liked Janelle and didn't want her gone, and so Howie was collateral damage. Chilltown told Howie and Janelle that they were on their side, they were going to vote to evict Erica, but then they work with James and Danielle, the Legion of Doom, to instead blindside Howie and Janelle. Boogie wins the final 7 HOH and puts up James and Janelle, with Janelle being the clear target. They just blindsided her again, and she's gotta go. That said, Will begins to see the value in keeping Janelle as long as possible, given she is a major target for everyone else. Everyone wants her out now, given she's on an island with Howie leaving. Will and Boogie decide to scheme one step further and pitch to Janelle to work together to reach the final 3. They're the best players and the biggest threats. They should all be working together. They form a trio and bring Janelle into Chilltown. They call her an official member of Chilltown now, Population 3. And then they throw the veto to her and get her off the block, proving their loyalty. Boogie nominates George in her place, and James is livid. He is now getting backstabbed by his closest allies. Again, a recurring trend with Chilltown. And with James about to leave, Chilltown now plan to pit Janelle against Danielle and vice versa. Also, I think it's worth pointing out as we get into the endgame of Boogie's game that he still intends to take Will to the final 2, although he is open to the idea of cutting him if it meant that he would win. But he really doesn't want to do that, and all signs are pointing to it not happening, which is a final 2 scenario where Boogie assuredly loses to the doctor. Erica wins the HOH at the final 6 and targets Janelle thanks to Chilltown forming a final 3 with her, bringing Erica into Chilltown 2, population still standing at 3, just from a different perspective. Meanwhile, Chilltown pandered to Danielle about protecting her from Erica and Janelle. Meanwhile, Chilltown also butter up Janelle and tell her that they are protecting her from Erica. They plan to ensure that Janelle wins the veto, which she does. Chilltown lie a ton to Danielle this week about wanting to keep her over George. There is a major good cop, bad cop vibe happening, and in the end, they evict Danielle. A double eviction hits at the final 5, and Janelle wins HOH, and Will gets her to target Erica, his biggest threat remaining in the game. She does. But then in the veto, Will loses it by a second, breaking his thumb in the process, perhaps the only comp that Will desperately tried to win across both seasons. And I think that if you outline what happens in this alternate timeline where he does win this veto, Well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but he is likely a 2-time winner. Erica wins the veto instead, and George is evicted as neither Will nor Erica are voting Boogie out. Boogie then wins the Final 4 HOH and punches his ticket to the Final 3, and all he wants at this point is for Will to join him. And thankfully for him, Janelle also wants Will in the Final 3 with her, so all sights are set on Erica getting evicted yet again at the Final 4. Janelle wins the final veto of the season, and Chilltown are thrilled for her. They had worked so hard all season to build up so many fake alliances and side deals, and it was all coming to fruition. As Will put it himself, Janelle was Will's Frankenstein's monster, and she was doing Chilltown justice. Both Will and Boogie brought Janelle and Erica into secret meetings in the storage room and talked about how they had to be the Final 3. Which Final 3 didn't matter to them, but it did to the two women. Operation Double Date from weeks ago was proving to be a massive success, and this was it. This was Chilltown's crowning moment. And then the other shoe dropped. With Janelle holding the veto, Erica had no choice but to turn on Will. It was either going to be her or Will getting evicted. She campaigned hard for Will to get evicted, and two major sticking points came up that helped Janelle make her decision. The first was nothing that Erica said, but it was actually that Will refused to kiss Janelle in the hot tub. Janelle just wanted a kiss, but Will couldn't do it. He actually had a girlfriend outside the house and didn't want to take his relationship with Janelle beyond just flirting. Janelle was scorned and upset, and when she spoke with Erica, Erica revealed that she was in Chilltown with the guys, which then set off a chain reaction for Janelle to put the pieces together. She was also in Chilltown. They were both in Chilltown. Oh my god, the boys used the girls to go against each other, and the gig was now up. Screw those boys. Janelle was ticked off and vengefully evicted Will at the Final 4 for all of this, ending Boogie's true Final 2, breaking up the real Chilltown, the real one, and blindsiding Boogie in the process. Boogie was devastated. He was blindsided. He actually ate that humble pie and admitted he could dish it out all season, but now that he was on the receiving end, he didn't like the taste of it. He went into the first part of that final HOH and attempted to mimic Richard Hatch from season 1 of Survivor by throwing the competition right out of the gate on live TV before the first commercial break. This move startled Janelle and caused her to accidentally remove her hand from the endurance competition, eliminating her as well, giving Erica the victory for part 1. And to be honest, as much as I doubt Boogie needing to do this, and honestly I think that he probably should have tried here to win, this is also probably one of Boogie's best moves of the season, despite it also kind of being unintentional. Inadvertently creates the shortest endurance comp we have ever seen.
Hey, Julie.
Yes, Mike?
You remember Richard Hatch?
Yes, I do.
They both have to take me to the finals.
What? Janelle.
Boogie wanted the women to believe they both needed to take him to the Final 2. They couldn't beat each other, but the reality is Janelle actually could beat Erica, and that was her plan. Boogie throwing this was risky, but it worked out for him as he went on to defeat Janelle in part 2 of the final HOH, where he then faced off against Erica in part 3. And before they competed for the final HOH, they both agreed, Boogie and Erica, to take each other to the Final 2 and oust Janelle, recognizing she was in fact the biggest threat to win. Boogie won part 3 of the final HOH over Erica. He evicted Janelle, getting revenge for Will, and did a great job with his jury Q&A back and forth. He was quite colorful, dare I say charming, and gave great answers to both Danielle and Howie in particular. He absolutely owned his game and explained it really well, and it was his devilish guile that won over the jury against Erica, alongside a dash of Dr. Will championing him hard in the jury on behalf of Chilltown. All of that got him 5 of the 7 jury votes to beat Erica and become the first ever All-Star winner of Big Brother.
Bring!
Hello?
Hey, Boogie, it's Will.
What's up, man? How you doing?
Dude, are you in the final 2?
And this vote from Will goes to Mike. Congratulations with both votes. You are the winner of Big Brother All-Stars. Mike Malin, come on out here.
And that is going to be it for the second part of this video series covering every winner from BB2 to BB25. Let me know what you all think about this trio of champions and who you're most excited for me to be talking about in the future. Until then, thank you to my patrons for all your support. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to grab your honorary Chilltown membership badge on your way out before you get to the jury house anyway, and I will see you in part 3 once I sneak out of that jury house to go karaokeing with the boys.
It's recording, it's recording. Got friends in low places where the whiskey's out, and the breeze chases my blues away. George, here he is. And I'll be okay. Yeah, here we go. Hit it, boy. I'm not big on social graces. Think I'll step on down.